Avoidance can't believe you actually did it. During no contact, you've stopped chasing. You've stopped explaining yourself. Silence has replaced your apologies, your follow-ups, and your desperate need for closure. But here's the twist. No one talks about what happens inside the avoidant when you actually hold the line. The people who push you away, who said they needed space, who acted like they were fine without you. They are not as settled as they look. In fact, when you enforce no contact and refuse to rescue her from her own decision, she enters a quiet crisis she never saw coming. On the surface, she looks unbothered. But deep down, something has shifted that she doesn't know how to process. At first, it looks like she made a decision easily. No hesitation, no emotion, no second thoughts. She walked away like it didn't matter, like the relationship was a coat she'd been meaning to take off for a while and finally did. No dramatic exit, no long goodbye, just distance, then silence, then nothing. And if you were watching from the outside, the story looked clean. She decided, she left, she moved on. But if you follow what happens next, something doesn't make sense. Because weeks later, sometimes months later, she starts checking, watching, reappearing. Not directly, not clearly, but enough to make you wonder. A view on your story, a like on something old, a mutual friend mentioning her name in a context that feels just slightly too deliberate. If she was so sure, why is she still here? If the decision was that easy, why does her presence keep leaking back into the edges? You're handling no contact wrong. Most people treat it like a waiting game. They go quiet, but they're still emotionally glued to their phone, still checking her social media at midnight, still mentally writing the text they promised themselves they wouldn't send. That's not no contact. That's silent chasing. And she can feel the difference, even without a single message from you. Real no contact isn't about punishing her or playing a strategy. It's about something she genuinely did not expect from you, and that unexpected thing is what begins to crack the foundation she thought was solid. Research from the University of California found that individuals with avoidant attachment styles show significantly elevated cortisol levels. That's the body's primary stress hormone during periods of perceived relationship uncertainty. In other words, her calm exterior during no contact is not what's happening inside her body. While she appears completely fine on the outside, her nervous system is quietly in distress. She is physiologically responding to your absence, even when her behavior suggests otherwise. That's not a small detail. That's the entire story hiding underneath the surface. Her body is registering your absence as a threat, even while her mind is trying to convince her that she made the right call. I see this pattern every single day working with people who are trying to make sense of why someone who claimed to need space is also somehow the person who seems most unsettled by the silence. People coming convinced that their avoidant partner felt nothing, move on immediately, maybe even felt relieved. And on the outside, that story makes sense. She didn't cry in front of you. She didn't call. She didn't show up at your door. So the natural conclusion is that she's fine and you're the only one struggling. But that conclusion is almost always wrong. What shows up consistently, without exception, is that the avoidant is carrying something heavy, quietly, privately, and completely alone. And the longer no contact holds, the heavier it gets. The silence doesn't empty her out. It fills her up with everything she was trying to avoid feeling. By the end of this, you'll understand exactly what is happening inside her mind during no contact, why her silence is not the same as indifference, and why the decision she made with such confidence is now sitting inside her like something she can't fully digest. This isn't about giving you false hope or a roadmap to win her back. It's about giving you the full, honest picture, because you deserve to understand what's actually going on beneath the surface, not just a performance she's putting on for the rest of the world. Dismissive avoidants don't process loss the way others do. When the relationship ends, they feel relief first. Space, freedom, control, the emotional weight that was building, the closeness that started feeling like pressure, the intimacy that started feeling like a trap, it lifts. And for a short window of time, that relief feels like confirmation, like the decision was right, like she knew herself well enough to know when to walk away. That initial feeling is real. Don't minimize it. She genuinely felt it. But that relief comes with condition. It only works as long as she believes she can come back. As long as she holds, somewhere in the back of her mind, the quiet assumption that you're still there, still available, still carrying a torch she didn't ask you to put down. The relief of leaving is only sustainable when the door remains unlocked, when she knows, even unconsciously, that if she ever changed her mind, re-entry would be possible. That assumption is the invisible foundation underneath her calm. And this is where no contact changes everything. Because no contact doesn't just create distance. It removes access, no reassurance, no emotional supply, no silent presence in her life, no late-night check-ins she can ignore but still feel, no social media activity she can monitor to measure where you are emotionally. Nothing. Just a clean, complete absence that she didn't fully anticipate when she made her decision. And that absence starts doing something to her that distance alone never would have. At first, she ignores it. She's busy. She has her own life. She tells herself this is exactly what she wanted, and she's not going to overthink it. Then she rationalizes it. Maybe you just need time. Maybe you'll reach out eventually. Maybe the silence is just the natural settling that happens after a breakup. And it doesn't mean anything permanent. She finds reasonable explanations and stacks them neatly in her mind. But then, something starts to break. Not dramatically. Not all at once. But in the small, quiet moments when the rationalizations run out and the silence is still there, unchanged and unbothered, the cracks begin to show. For the first time, she's forced to face a reality she has been avoiding from the very beginning. The decision is final. Not because she chose it in some powerful, clear-headed moment of self-knowledge, but because you accepted it. You didn't fight it. You didn't soften it. You didn't leave a gap for her to slip back through when she was ready. You simply treated her decision like it meant exactly what it sounded like. And that is the one response she did not have a script for. And that's what she didn't expect. She expected distance, not disappearance. She expected silence, not detachment. There is a difference between someone who is quiet because they're hurting and waiting, and someone who is quiet because they have genuinely redirected their energy toward their own life. She expected the first one. She's slowly realizing she might be getting the second. And that realization doesn't arrive all at once. It seeps in, gradually, through the absence of things she used to take for granted. And when that realization hits, her behavior changes. She checks your social media. Not obsessively, not obviously, but consistently. She finds small reasons to exist near the edges of your life. A comment through a mutual friend. An interaction that's just ambiguous enough to be deniable. She tests a connection without fully admitting to herself that that's what she's doing. She might even reach out with something low stakes, a meme, a memory, something that gives her information about where you are without requiring her to be vulnerable about where she is. These are not the actions of someone who is certain. These are the actions of someone who is quietly panicking about something they can't directly name. Not because she suddenly became emotional, not because something in her fundamentally changed overnight, but because she lost something she thought she controlled. Access to you, the ability to know where you are, how you feel, whether the door is still open. That access was a form of emotional regulation for her. Even when she wasn't using it, even when she was pulling away, she knew it was there. Now it isn't. And that loss is hitting her in a way that the relationship itself, in its final stages, never quite did. Every single day that passes without a message from you, the weight of what she chose becomes more real. She doesn't get to keep the quiet comfort of knowing you're orbiting her. She doesn't get to hold on to the background reassurance that she could reach out when she was ready and you'd be waiting. She made a final sounding move, and you treated it like it meant exactly what it sounded like. Avoidants are deeply used to people not taking their withdrawals at face value. They're used to being chased back in, to having someone else undo the distance. You didn't undo it. You honored it. And that single fact is doing more internal damage to her certainty than anything you could have said in an argument. She starts replaying things she told herself she was done thinking about. Small moments. The way you showed up for her in ways she didn't ask for. The time she pulled away and you stayed anyway, not desperately, but genuinely. She starts seeing those moments differently now that they're not available to her anymore. And the story she told herself, that you were too much, that the relationship was too intense, that she was protecting herself by leaving, starts developing cracks. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, in the background, while she's trying to fall asleep or sitting in traffic or doing something completely ordinary. That's when it hits her. And she has no one to talk to about it because she was the one who ended it. She can't call her friends and admit that the relief she expected never fully arrived, so she carries it alone. And alone is exactly where no contact places her, inside her own decision, with no exit that doesn't require her to do the one thing that terrifies her most, be vulnerable first. And that's the part no one talks about. Avoidants don't struggle when they leave. They struggle when they realize they can't undo it, because living with the decision is harder than making it. Making it felt like control. Living with it, especially when the other person has stopped making it easy to reverse, feels like something else entirely. It feels like consequence. And consequence, for someone who has spent years engineering her emotional life to avoid exactly that, is the most disorienting thing she could possibly face. This is the part no one tells you about no contact. It's not just silence. It's a mirror. And for an avoidant who has spent years avoiding her own reflection, that mirror is the most uncomfortable thing you could have possibly handed her. Not with anger, not with ultimatums, but simply by choosing yourself quietly and completely. That choice, more than any argument or conversation ever could, makes her live with the full weight of her own final decision. And that weight, it turns out, is much harder to carry than she ever expected.